Well, I think it's a major scandal, and it's obviously and evidently probably the biggest scandal of such a scale of political corruption in Brussels. It's an alarming story. We know now that a good number of members of the European Parliament have received money from outside sources. It's the classic schoolbook, textbook case of corruption, political corruption, an outside force using a lot of money, buying political influence and influencing decisions in a political body. We also know that some NGOs were involved. These NGOs that portray themselves very often as the defenders of human rights and all good things. And they are very much into the system here of how the EU works, how the Parliament and the European Commission, how they work, and they influence decisions. And they were also involved. And that's another alarming factor here.
Well, there are two scandals. The first scandal is that of corruption. And I think that happens because MEPs and the whole bubble lives in accordance with their own lifestyle. Many of them, they think they're above the law. They often criticize others for not following the rules of law, and they make a big issue out of it. But they imagine that they are not really they somehow have a dispensation from having to sort of follow those rules. And this is, to me, the biggest scandal of all, that the two NGOs involved in the scandal, No Peace Without Justice and Fight Impunity, are both involved in human rights advocacy. And they're closely connected with the Human Rights Directorate, which is meant to be above the law, meant to be almost like the angels who are always right and they always do morally the best thing. And yet these are the people that are really at the roots of this particular corruption scandal.
Hungary has been attacked for years now by this elite here, the Brussels elite, the majority of the parliament, many of the commission representatives and leaders, and one of their favorite subjects has been corruption. They've been talking about how Hungary is corrupt, how every EU penny is going into the pockets of Viktor Orban and his family and friends and all that nonsense. And the very same people who were the loudest in many of these debates and who led the attacks are now implicated in this stuff, and some of them are behind bars, some are still to be investigated. But this is an exact illustration of how double standards work here and how actually hypocrisy seems to dominate Brussels and its workings.
European Union is very, very good at criticizing other people, other nations, for their rule of law breaches. But they're very political in the way they make these kind of judgments. So, for example, the Spanish government, which is a socialist government, has been found to be violating rule of law norms. Nobody discusses that. That's okay, because there are people. Therefore, the rule of law problem is not really applying to them. We're going to forgive them and watch our shoelaces and hope that this will go away. When it's Hungary or Poland, where they have a different political regime, is seen to be doing something that violates their definition of the rule of law, then they jump on that and they weaponize the rule of law to the point at which they basically are using legal norms as a way of making a political statement. But what they don't do is actually take rules and the law seriously, and we know that by the way they behaved in relation to this scandal. The lesson of this experience is we need to break the relationship between lobbying group, non-government organizations and the European Union. There's going to be a clear line of demarcation.
The European parliamentary elections next year, 2024, that's when I think we should be talking very clearly and openly about the problems here, the corruption, how decisions have been influenced, and that's where we can open, hopefully, a new chapter.